TEDx Portland Year 13 is coming to the Keller Auditorium on Saturday, April 26. This promises to be Portland's most inspirational, educational day of the year with 10 talks, 1 interview, and 7 live performances. Headliners include soccer legend Christine Sinclair, Grammy-nominated rapper Logic, Ivan McClellan from 8 Seconds Rodeo, artist and public joy creator Mike Bennett, and many more. Tickets are on sale now at TEDxPortland.com. You can use promo code RADIO13 for 13% off. Mark your calendars for Saturday, May 3rd because CityCast Portland is hosting a block party in downtown Portland's Ankeny Alley in celebration of 503 Day, a totally real holiday. For 5 hours and 3 minutes, we get to celebrate everything we love about living in our great city with live entertainment, food, drinks, and so much more. Like local celebrities doing live band karaoke. Even Dylan T. Pickle has RSVP'd. And then we're going to cap it all off with a live taping of our show, CityCast Portland, the one you're listening to right now. Also, it's totally free. Find more information at our website, portland.citycast.fm. See you there.
Portland is facing a breathtaking budget deficit, with $93 million in general fund spending needed to be cut to balance next year's budget. We got our first look at what those cuts could mean a few weeks ago, when Portland's new city administrator Michael Jordan released his preliminary budget recommendations. Today on CityCast Portland, Jordan talks with host Claudia Meza about his proposal to the mayor and city council for addressing severe budget challenges with extraordinary change. It's Thursday, April 3rd. I'm senior producer Julia Fiaioni, and this is what Portland's talking about.
Well, congratulations on being confirmed as our city's first city administrator. I want to point out for people not in the know that you are neither a basketball star nor the actual mayor. Could you briefly explain your role in the city to people who might not? I know, Michael, I know because I saw Parks and Recreation and Chris Traeger was my favorite character. So I know what you do. But for those not in the know.
Sure. My role basically is to be in charge of the day-to-day operations of all city government. And all city employees ultimately are accountable to me, except for the city attorney and the chief of police, which are also both independently appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council.
So basically, you take care of all of the higher level stuff. So the budgets and that kind of thing, because I know your first task in this job has been to work with Mayor Wilson to put together the city budget, which is turning out to be quite the undertaking, with the city facing an estimated $93 million deficit. Now, I know you released some preliminary recommendations recently, which amounted to $35 million in general fund cuts and about $65 in non-general fund cuts. As we were, because, we're nerds, so we're looking through these recommendations, like, how do you even begin coming up with those suggestions for such deep cuts? Like, I was wondering, to use specific data points, are you looking at, this doesn't get as much use, or where do you start?
Well, it started actually last October when Mayor Wheeler was still in office, and he issued what we call budget guidance. And that went out to all bureaus. And the guidance then was that the mayor would like between 5 and 8% cuts across the board. He did exempt the police bureau, the fire bureau, and the Bureau of Emergency Communications, the 911 center, basically. And so he did exclude those from the guidance. So everybody else prepared a proposal for the city budget office, and they identified which things they would look at cutting. With the leadership team, which is myself, Assistant City Administrator Annie Von Berg, and the 6 deputies which oversee the 6 service areas for the city. We got together as a team and went through all of those proposals and made some decisions about which ones to include in my recommendations. And then we also included in that proposal or that set of recommendations, we obviously did not have recommendations that would fill the entire gap. the $92 million at the time. But we also included a number of possible alternatives that we really put that out at the end of February to the public and to the council for them to begin to give us feedback on what choices they would make and what values they have about how to go about balancing this budget. And so we've had listening sessions with the public, and we also have the first of at least two and maybe more work sessions with council before Mayor Wilson is required to propose to council a balanced budget. And for your listeners, Oregon budget law has some very specific requirements regarding the proposal and deliberation of budgets for local governments. And one of them is that the budget deliberation doesn't officially start until the budget officer, in our case, Mayor Wilson, proposes a balanced budget. And then the official deliberations by the budget committee, which in our case is the city council, they can begin to deliberate then on the budget. Before that proposal by the budget officer, what we are doing right now are not considered official budget deliberations. We're really gathering information for Mayor Wilson to propose that budget. And he has to do that by charter by May the 5th.
Gotcha. If you're listening from District 2, tonight is the last listening session. You better get ready, Mr. Michael Jordan. Some people are very upset about a community center. Okay, so when you were speaking about this budget to local media outlets, you gave us this really clear quote where you said, this is as severe a budget challenge as I've seen in 40 years, and it's going to require extraordinary change. And so I'm wondering, like, from your opinion, what the most impactful cuts in that extraordinary change is that you're proposing for the city budget?
Well, they come in multiple forms. Let's talk about the general fund first. And that's the one that gets the most attention because it's the biggest part of our budget that has flexible funding in it, where the council has the discretion to spend the money almost any way they wish that's legal. And within the general fund, there are really three big expenditure categories right now. The biggest, of course, is public safety. That's police and fire generally, but also includes emergency management and
just real quick. Sorry, Michael. You're giving us the whole budget, which is great. But I'm asking you personally, like you as a person who I'm assuming lives in Portland. You live in Portland, right?
I do not.
Where do you live?
Canby.
Canby. Are you driving every day from Canby, Oregon?
I either drive or take the MAX, one or the other.
Oh, gotcha. There's that. But also, I'm asking you as the administrator, like,
Sure.
What do you think will be one of the most impactful cuts that you're proposing that you think will affect the most people? That you think, not so much like, oh, people are going to be so upset about, but just like, this is one that's going to go across.
Well, I appreciate that we made some recommendations at the end of February. But my job is not to make the judgments about which things are most impactful or least impactful. That's why we have 12 elected officials who will ultimately deliberate on the budget. But I can say, and did say to the media, that there are no good choices. All of these choices will impact broad parts of Portlanders, whether it's parks, and I did take a fair amount of the cuts that the Parks Bureau proposed in my recommendations. And I did not take any of the public safety cuts that police, fire, and emergency communications ultimately did propose. I mentioned that Mayor Wheeler exempted them from the guidance. I should also say that the new council, when they took office in January, asked for public safety to give proposed cuts. And so they have done that at the 8% level. So those are actually on the table for the council to consider. And of course, the council has the latitude to make cuts that bureaus did not propose. They have the latitude to do what they wish with that budget once they get it and begin to deliberate.
Have you heard of bookshop.org? They're an online marketplace whose entire mission is to support local independent bookstores. The way it works is every time you buy a book through bookshop.org, you can choose an independent bookstore to directly support with your purchase. Just select your favorite neighborhood shop from across the street or across the country. I know a lot of us are trying to wean ourselves off Amazon, so here's a great option. And you'll feel good knowing that with bookshop.org, your money is supporting your local community and helping indie bookstores continue to foster culture, curiosity, and a love of reading for generations to come. Use the code CITYCAST to get 15% off your next order at bookshop.org.
This episode is brought to you by the Nissan Armada Pro 4X. With a twin-turbo V6 engine ready to propel your adventures, up to 8,500 pounds of towing capacity to haul all your favorite toys and space for 8 passengers, Nissan's most powerful car yet will chew up and spit out anything you throw at it. Learn more about the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada at nissanusa.com. Towing capacity varies by configuration. See Nissan Towing Guide and Owner's Manual for additional information. Always secure cargo.
In all, you've proposed the elimination of about 275 jobs citywide. How did you make decisions about which bureau might see job cuts? Like, is it a conversation you're having with the heads of bureaus? Is it, again, another data point that we just don't know about? And have you gotten any blowback? Because I remember seeing the headlines of the proposed job cuts like within days of local media just reporting your various raises once you went from interim to permanent, which, I mean, that's what happens when you go from interim to permanent. But I just thought that was like, I'm curious how that's hitting you in City Hall.
Well, I think your question is more about the 274 positions that may be eliminated that were in the recommendations.
Well, my question is twofold. So my question, yes, for sure. My question is about the 275, like how you came about it. But we could pause then and we could talk about the other one if you'd like.
Okay, well, let's talk first about the 274. And those also came from the bureaus in their recommendations to fulfill the guidance. They cut other things besides positions, but they were proposed by the bureaus. And so those positions are not all filled. Many of them are vacant, and so we're eliminating the position from the budget. It's not a layoff. However, some of them are filled, and that will involve layoffs. And as you can imagine, that is not a very happy situation for anybody, and particularly our partners in labor unions are not happy. We meet with them regularly and talk about where we're going. We are going through the process of doing some scenario evaluation, and some of those scenarios involve things like furloughs rather than layoffs. So that, for your audience, that means that we would actually reduce people's working hours per week or per month, and they wouldn't get paid for some of those hours. And that would be a way to reduce the budget without laying people off from their jobs. So we're looking at alternatives also and working with our labor partners on those alternatives. And let me say that those 274 positions that were in the recommendation, that number is likely to go up because we did not close the gap with those 274 positions. So to be able for the mayor to propose a balanced budget, it's likely that there'll need to be more positions that have to be proposed for elimination.
Right. So there wasn't like this bureau has way too many people, or, that's my question is like how we went about that.
Well, we are looking at across the board, and the way you decide basically about these is to decide what services are you going to reduce? And that's a value judgment that the council will ultimately have to make. I did not propose any layoffs in public safety. They may come back and say, we're going to have to balance this and not take as many positions from parks and take some positions from police or fire. And so that's a value judgment really based on what services do you want to preserve or are you willing to cut? And the positions will follow that judgment as to where we cut. And let me say, we're evaluating all vacancies across the entire city. We would prefer, obviously, to eliminate vacant positions than lay people off. So we're
Right.
evaluating that. And we also are looking at management spans of control. So are there places, for instance, that we could take two groups that are doing similar work that both have a supervisor? Could we merge those groups and eliminate one of the supervisory positions? So we're looking at all of these options, not just line staff, but how can we streamline and consolidate management? We're also looking at those things.
Yeah. I'm curious, we were talking about the furloughs. Does that mean that people would be able to keep their benefits if they were furloughed? Or does that mean, yeah, you're nodding
Yes,
your head. Okay.
yes, we would not eliminate people's benefits.
Okay. Because, I'm sure a lot of city employees are listening right now and they're just like, what does that mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then let's go back. Have you gotten any blowback? Like, have you felt like, oh man, because unfortunately you have to be the face of this. I know it's a collaborative effort, but you're the city administrator.
Yeah, there's certainly people are, they're anxious and some are angry and that's completely understandable and I get it. And um, you know, just to try and put a little bit of this into context, this is my 41st year of public life, and the last five have been the most difficult 5 years of the 41. There's just no question, from a
Wow.
pandemic to civil unrest to a homeless crisis, and now a pretty significant budget challenge and a change in the form of government and a brand new government coming into place. And so I have to say, and this, I would bet if you polled city employees, you would get a similar answer. This has
Hmm.
been a really tough 5 years, and the challenges continue.
Yeah. Have you ever lived in Portland? Now, I'm assuming you have. And then you moved to Canby?
I've lived in Canby my entire life.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. It's
Well,
rare to meet people who have lived in one place their entire life, is what I'm saying, especially
I've
on the
been
West Coast.
I've been incredibly fortunate to have. I think this is my sixth stop in public life, and I've never had to move. So I've been really
That is
lucky.
so cool.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of conversations are you having with Mayor Wilson about the budget? Like, have the two of you worked on these ideas collaboratively? I'm hearing a collaborative approach, but I'm wondering if, you first hole up, then present, or if it's if it's a whole just chat
No,
sesh.
it's a good question. So we really started working on the budget with Mayor Wheeler clear back in August last year, and then I mentioned that he issued budget guidance in October. We asked for all of those proposals I mentioned from bureaus by mid-December, and when Mayor Wilson was elected back in November, we meet with Mayor Wilson probably somewhere between 3 and 5 hours a week
Wow.
just on budget. So it's a pretty intense collaborative effort. Ultimately, of course, it's his balanced budget that is presented to council by May the 5th. So
Right.
he's very heavily involved in all of the decisions.
Well, I know all of this comes while there's still a significant proposed increase in spending on shelter and other homeless services, which has been, Mayor Wilson's signature issue, which is why we were wondering, is he able to at all have a say, since I know that's his end game? How much did his ambitious plan complicate the city's upcoming budget? Because, like, as you were saying, you're working with him, but you've been working on this since, Wheeler's time. And so I can imagine that you were like, oh, this is terrible. And then here comes this young whippersnapper with a dream. And then you're just like, more, you want more. So I'm curious, like, were you just like, fine? Or were you like, oh, man, I mean, I know you can tell me with your eyes.
it, you know, I love this job
Mhm.
because it is so intellectually challenging. And nobody elected me. They elected Mayor Wilson, they elected the council, to make these judgments about what's important for Portland. And Mayor Wilson, it was very clear through his entire campaign, we knew that he had an agenda to increase nighttime shelter.
Mhm.
And of course, we didn't know all of the details, and we hadn't costed anything until he was actually elected, and we started talking about what he wanted, and we began to cost out his proposal. And as it turns out, it's about an additional $28 million to realize what he wants, which is about 1,500 nighttime shelter beds, and he'd like them in place by December 1st of this calendar year. So, yes, that is another expenditure. And that is a part of the gap that we are looking at trying to fill. And I am pretty certain, as certain as I can be right now, that Mayor Wilson will include that proposal within his balanced budget, which means we need to come up with another $28 million, either in revenue, and Mayor Wilson is working very hard, both with the state legislature and the governor's office, and also with Multnomah County and Metro. Those are the places where we might be able to get that revenue, which would avoid further cuts in other programs to be able to realize those shelter beds. And so I want to make sure your listeners understand that even though Mayor Wilson is the mayor of Portland, he only gets to propose that budget. Ultimately, the 12 members of council must vote on a balanced budget and ultimately adopt one by the end of June.
Yeah. Well, again, like you were saying, from you to Mayor Wilson, these are just recommendations. And again, the city is currently hosting listening sessions. Again, District 2 tonight is the last one for the public to input these budget ideas. And just getting a location here, District 2, it's going to be at PCC. Lovely strip of North Portland, by the way. So yeah, from 6 to 8:30 at PCC tonight is District 2's last listening session. But back to my question. I understand mostly now it's in the hands of the mayor and, of course, city council. So what comes next?
Well, yes, you can wait. However, and you mentioned the listening session tonight, and that will be the end of those 4 listening sessions in the districts. However, city council, once they get the proposed budget in early May, they have scheduled, I believe, 6 work sessions in May. And so those will all be posted as public meetings. I don't believe the city council will take testimony at each of those, but they are required to hold public hearings before they pass an adopted budget. So there will be public hearings advertised in front of city council before they make final decisions. So there'll be more opportunity to give direct input to council. And then, of course, we have on portland.gov, I can't remember the actual /, it may be /budget or something like that, where you can give testimony online also.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the time that you've taken breaking all this stuff down, because I know it's really scary for someone who doesn't really follow things. They're just like, oh, we're not going to get services. And then people who work at the city are just like, I'm not going to have a job. I mean, it's already feeling sad about it. I'm wondering, I know that, again, you're just suggesting cuts and stuff, but could you also suggest, I don't know, like ways to make up that budget deficit? Here's an idea. Michael Jordan. That's an iconic name. Our mayor, we know he's a baller. He loves basketball. Senator Ron Wyden. I don't know if you know, he's very tall. He loves basketball. I'm seeing a charity basketball game on our horizon. Maybe what you do is you referee as Michael Jordan. Maybe this is how we make up 0.001% of our budget deficit.
I've in multiple times over the years have been asked to sign basketballs that have been auctioned off.
Oh my God, that's
for
brilliant.
fundraisers. So maybe we'll do that.
That is so good. And then we'll just, whatever, the city gets sued by the actual Michael Jordan basketball player. Who cares? By then we're all done. Sell them off for $1 million each. Everyone keeps their job, whatever.
There you go.
That is so sweet. You go to jail for all of us? Oh, Michael Jordan, what a sweetheart. All right, but last thing for reals, last thing. You might have heard this because it's a totally real holiday, but last year, our listeners and ourselves, we willed 503 Day into existence. It's when Portlanders on May 3rd, we celebrate all that it is to be a Portlander and Portland. And unfortunately, because of the way the budget presentation is happening, we invite a lot of people in the city to come through, and some of them were like, oh, this budget reveals May 5th. Like, that's going to be our crunch weekend, you know? But wanted to invite you as well. We are shutting down the Ankeny Alley and Southwest 3rd between Burnside and Ash. I don't know if you've heard, but Peabot is involved with this as well. So for 5 hours and 3 minutes, we're going to be there having a great time. Please come through. But I wondered, like, what is it about Portland that you think we should be celebrating on 503 Day? As the person who has to see the underbelly of our financial inner workings, like, what do you think we should be most proud of?
We should be most proud of each other. You know, this is one of the most beautiful places on the planet, and I've lived here my whole life. It's just really hard to think of a better place to live. The physical beauty, the weather is relatively benign. It's just a wonderful spot. The waters, ways, and the mountains and the ocean and the desert. But the thing that makes Portland special is the people who live here. They have a big heart. They care about this place a lot. And I'm continually impressed by how Portlanders step up when there's something that needs to be done. So I think we should celebrate each other. And I'm incredibly confident that no matter how tough our financial situation might be, Portlanders will step up, and this will still be a great place to live.
Well, thank you again, City Administrator Michael Jordan, for your time and for hanging out with me.
It's my pleasure. It's really been fun. Thank you.
Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate, or leave us a review? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.